Hello everyone, this is Rick, and welcome to Astral Club. The name of this video is Astral Return to Hell. Yes, I went back for more. I must be some kind of masochist. If you are of a sensitive disposition, or if you're triggered by a story of spousal abuse, perhaps go check out some of my other videos where I visit planets or go to the mental plane and see all kinds of very pleasant things. At any rate, I'd like to thank a couple new Patreons. Their names are Stephen Gobin and Phenologist. They are both at the Astral Ascended level, so thank you very much for your support. It is very much appreciated. And of course, they'll get early videos on Tuesday that'll be commercial free, and also an email on Patreon where they can contact me with their questions and comments. If you'd like to join these great people along with many others, there will be a link for Patreon at Astral Club in the description. Well, folks, I didn't think I was going to be doing another video associated with the sub-astral again, but let me hit you with the story. A few days ago, I left my body again and felt myself drawn right back to the classroom for the Astral Guide School. There, the professor was talking about how, well, they were talking about the recent trip to the sub-astral and how, unfortunately, it had been cut short because certain things had gone wrong. And as he said this, he kind of glanced at me, at least I imagined he did, out of the corner of his eye. But I thought maybe it was just, me being extra paranoid, because if you recall, we were all supposed to stay together when we went down there. They went down one cavern, and I decided to go down another. And I thought that I was unobserved, but perhaps, well, who knows? We'll see. At any rate, he said we were supposed to go there and rescue a soul that was worthy of rescue and that he believed could be rescued. However, because of certain things that had gone wrong, they had to cut it short. So he asked for a volunteer to go back there by themselves to rescue this particular soul. Well, if you've ever seen that movie, A Christmas Story, it's a classroom scene where after the friend of the central character, Ralphie, ended up sticking his tongue and got stuck to a pole outside in the middle of winter. The teacher wanted to know who was responsible for this, encouraging this poor flick guy to do this. And Ralphie, who was of course one of the friends who was encouraging him, looked around like, I wonder who did this, I was pretty much doing the same thing, just kind of looking around like, geez, I wonder who's going to volunteer. And as I did this, I suddenly heard, Rick, excellent, thank you for volunteering. And I just kind of pointed at myself, like me, as if there was another Rick in the classroom. He said, yes, you, thank you very much for your volunteering. The rest of the class kind of looked at me like I was insane, but I was in a situation. I said, okay, can I have the name of the person that you think can be rescued? He said, you can call her Mary O'Hara. And she was in the same cavern that we all went down, if you recall, Rick. I said, oh yes, I definitely recall which cavern that was, because of course that was the one we all went down. He said, excellent then. So be on your way. And with that, I felt myself whooshed away. I felt the sensation of speed, lost consciousness, and then bam, I was right back in that circular underground cavern with the stalactites, the stalagmites, the oppressive darkness, the fear, the anger, the hatred, the suffering, the moaning, all of that wonderful ambiance that you can expect from a beautiful day in hell. So I figured, well, there's no time like the present. I might as well head. I mean, of course, I remembered where they had headed. I headed that way. I put on my monk robe again because it had always stood me in good stead in the past. As I wandered down the seemingly rough-hewn passageway, the walls seemed to gleam with an eerie type of lime green light, which I hadn't observed in my other tunnel, but this one had that. So it allowed for a little bit of light for me to navigate by. I saw many of the same things that I saw before. I don't want to belabor all of that. Let's just say that there was evidence of violence and degradation. There were astral bodies that had decayed and died. There were other individuals there who were in similar stages or in slightly earlier stages of decay. After all, this is a place where these souls come when they're at their absolute last, when they have given up all hope of redemption, when they have committed deeds that are so foul they believe they deserve nothing less than this, and when they have separated themselves so much from the common sensibilities of mankind that they just naturally seek their level, and in this case their level is this last stop. As I walked, I called out softly, telepathically, for Mary O'Hara. At first, I didn't get any kind of response, so I just kept on walking. However, as I proceeded further and further down this dark, rough-hewn, cavernous hole, I started to hear rustling sounds, and a little bit of fear started cropping up. My hackles, you might say, went up. And I had the distinct impression that I was being followed, and that it was more footsteps were accumulating behind me as I proceeded further and further down the passageway. Now, my fear level in this type of a situation is present, but I've learned how to control it. And typically, these creatures here are in the last stages of decay. They might appear alarming, frightening, pathetic, but in and of themselves, they're typically very cowardly. However, a group of hyenas can pull down a lion if there's enough of them together. And I sensed more and more were accumulating behind me. Now, one thing you can't show in situations like this, especially in the lower astral, and it's only doubly true down here in the sub-astral, is you can't show weakness, you can't show fear. Because if you do, they'll be on you. And that's just not a very positive situation to be in. Now, yes, could I return to my body? I could. However, that would leave the mission undone. And I don't like doing that. So, suddenly, words just came to me. And even more importantly than the words was the power that I put into saying them, the confidence that I put into it, the fearlessness that I put into these words. When I said in nomine Christi, which is probably my bad Latin for in the name of Christ. And when that happened, there was just a glow in the cavern of beautiful white light, and all those shadowy creatures took off. And he ran for cover. And I sensed that they had all dissipated and gone to hide in their own little hidey holes. So I decided to continue on my way. I hadn't gone very far, though, when I heard a very weak telepathic voice address me. And I could tell it was from a woman. And she said, "Father, are you here to damn me?" I tried to surround myself with the most sympathetic glow that I could. And I said, "No, daughter, I am here to reclaim you and to hear your confession." And when I said that, there was just this powerful glow that came over this poor, degraded astral being. And with it, she showed me her life. She had lived in the early part of the 20th century in Ireland. She was a country girl, salt of the earth type of person, beautiful in her own way, certainly humble. Her father had abused her, but I guess that was just what they were used to back then. I mean, physically, he had abused her. He found a man who he liked, who was similar to him. And he arranged a marriage between his daughter, Mary, and this man. There was no love in this marriage, but if that's all there had been, Mary would have been fine with that. However, he would go to the pub. He was an alcoholic. He would go to the pub, spend what little money they had that they needed for food and basic rent, and he'd come back staggering drunk and beat her savagely. She tried to go to neighbors. She tried to go to her parents. She even tried the local police. I don't know if that's what they were called, but that was their basic duty. And all of them told her that those were issues between a man and a wife. And you have to remember that the Ireland of that day, first of all, there was no divorce. There was no divorce from a religious standpoint, and of course she was a Roman Catholic. And there was no divorce from a legal standpoint. Divorce didn't become legal in Ireland until probably somewhere around 25 or so years ago. I forget the exact date. But so she was trapped, truly trapped, in not only a loveless marriage, but an extremely abusive one. And when he wasn't beating her physically, he was tearing her down mentally. He was just a miserable individual. After a number of years, she just didn't think she could take it any longer, and much to her shame, she went to a local wise woman, someone who we might term a witch, told her of her problems, and this wise woman gave her poison to slip into her husband's food and drink. It worked, and he died. And no one was really the wiser. Number one, no one really cared that he was dead. Number two, they figured, well, he's an alcoholic. The fact that he's dead is just probably what he had coming to him. So there was no questions on that count. However, Mary was at heart a profoundly good person. And this murder tore at her. It ripped her from the inside. It tortured her to a point where she couldn't sleep, she couldn't eat. she felt that she had damned her soul for all eternity because she had murdered this man who was also her husband, who had become joined to her by the Holy Church. So finally, in desperation, she hung herself and obviously committed suicide. When she was discovered, she was denied consecrated soil to be buried in, so she was buried in unconsecrated soil. Her soul was aware of that, and if it was possible for it to be even more tortured than it had been, because now not only had she murdered her husband, but she had committed suicide, another mortal sin in the eyes of the church, and she had been buried in unconsecrated ground. She suffered and suffered in the lower astral, deep depression. She had no belief, no hope that she could ever be rescued or redeemed. And finally, she sunk to this low place where she was very close to the astral body passing away and her soul falling into a dormant state, because, as I said in the last video, it's impossible for a soul to die, but it can go into a dormant state. Well, I heard all of this, and when she was done, I looked at her and said, "Daughter, your sins are forgiven. In nomine Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen." She was instantly, I saw a happiness come over her, a happiness that she hadn't felt in a long, long time. I said, "Rise and walk with me, and I will take you from this place." She looked at me sadly, though, and said she just didn't have the energy to leave this place. So I said to her, "Hold my hand and take what energy you need so that you can move with me out of this appalling pit and that we can return to a better place." She did, and she took a certain amount of energy from me. I definitely did feel the drain, but she was able to stand. And I just saw some of the wounds that were in the astral heal. The body instantly looked better. It wasn't this decaying corpse that it had been just a few moments before. And together we walked out of that place. And I told her as we left that the new Ireland was nothing like the one that she had left. That no longer could a husband just beat his wife with impunity. That there were law enforcement officials and people that you could go to. And that divorce was now legal, which she found very hard to believe. I said, "Yes, it is." I said, "So fear not to reincarnate if you wish to go back to Ireland, because it is a very different place than the one you left. But I think there is hope there now." After we finished that talk, I thought about returning to the council chambers. And instantly we both appeared there. The other students were gone. It was just the professor there. When he saw me show up with Mary, he said, "Well done. You are forgiven for your earlier transgression. Next time, stick with the group." I said, "Yes, sir." Okay. That was that experience. I apologize for another hell video. I hadn't intended to do another one. But circumstances are what they are. So, if you liked it, please hit the like button, share it with those of like minds. Go ahead and leave some questions and comments, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And as always, I will see you on the astral plane.